We're back, baby. Little boom breakdown coming to you. We got the boomachino representing right here. You see it. We're doing a boom breakdown for UFC Orlando. Um, Pretty good card, not the greatest card, but a couple of really intriguing fights on this card. Starting with the main card, we got the main event. Obviously, we got Jacare versus Jack Hermansson. Jack Hermansson's taking this fight on short notice, coming off of a big win against um, David Branch. That was an impressive submission. That guillotine that he dropped, kind of like you're taking the back and then you drop and take the arm in guillotine. That was a slick transition right there. And to submit a black belt like David Branch, that's impressive. And he's looked really good as of late. He's a little bit like herky jerky on the feet, kind of a weird style, unorthodox style on the feet. And man, Jacare looks solid in his last fight against Chris Weidman with his boxing. Like, that was really impressive because when I was watching that fight, I was like, wow, Chris Weidman is looking slick on the feet, better than he's ever looked on the feet with his striking. And Jacare was able to find a KO finish in the later rounds, and that was a really evenly matched fight, and the fight was really leaning towards Chris Weidman as far as winning a decision goes, but Jacare pulled it out, man. He looked amazing on the feet there. He had some power in his hands, some speed, and obviously on the ground, he's able to finish anybody. So with this fight, I feel like it's probably going to be kept standing. I don't know if either fighter has much of a advantage in the wrestling department to try to dictate where the fight ends up. But I do think that if the fight does stay standing, Jacare probably has the more well-rounded striking. I think his boxing's really looking great, and I think that his power and his speed is going to be an advantage in this fight on the feet. I think Hermansson can obviously land something out of nowhere, something wild, but I don't think that he's going to be able to outstrike someone like Jacare. And if this fight does go to the ground, man, if Hermansson can land one of these crazy submissions on Jacare, that's just like wow right there. That's a wow moment. So I don't see that happening because of obviously the caliber of jiu-jitsu that Jacare has, but that's probably where Hermansson would try to look to take the fight to have his most successes on the ground. And Jacare is not the guy to do that with, so it's going to be probably a fight that's kept on the feet. And man, that's Jacare all day for me for striking. I think he's going to get the TKO victory by strikes. I think it'll be negated. I think the wrestling will be negated, and I think it'll stay standing for the majority of the fight. And I lean towards Jacare. Oh, and in the co-main event, one of our favorite fighters, Greg Hardy, back in action after his terrible loss at in New York in that last fight for his debut. Now they're putting the guy back in the co-main event. Obviously, it's all about names and recognition, and people are probably wanting to see this guy lose. When it comes to his past and how people view him. Props to him for getting into the sport and trying to be at the highest level in the sport. It's definitely not easy. I could always respect anybody trying to do that, coming over from the NFL. But I truly personally don't like seeing a guy take other guys shine who have been in this sport and paid their dues and put their time in year after year, fight after fight, and never get that co-main event slot where you really get your name out there and you get some recognition and you get perhaps a chance to make more money, a chance to build your name. It's going to a guy that's just getting it handed to him because of his past, his past in the NFL and his past successes pretty much. But I just don't think that's a fair way to do things. But hey, life ain't fair, and neither is the fucking UFC, huh? Chill. But for the sake of what I think's gonna happen, obviously I think they're giving Greg Hardy an opponent that's beatable. That's obviously they want to see if he's UFC caliber, so they're gonna give him a little bit of a test, but they also want the guy to win, so they can keep making money off the guy. Let's be honest. So I'm going to go with Greg Hardy by KO. I'm sure he's probably learned from some of his mistakes in the last fight. You know, he had that illegal blow, and it was a fight-ending blow, so he pretty much got disqualified. But he does train at ATT, a lot of high-level coaches that have been in the game for so many years over there, and I'm sure that they're working with him on being more patient and taking his time in there. So I'll go with Greg Hardy by KO. Next, we got Alex Oliveira and Mike Perry. This is one of the more exciting fights on the card that I'm looking forward to. Mike Perry coming off that loss to Donald Cerrone, and Cowboy Oliveira is coming off that loss to Gunnar Nelson, I believe, where he got that nasty cut like right here on his eyebrow. And but he's just always a dangerous fighter wherever the fight goes, whether it's on the ground, on the feet. He's a wild fighter. You know, he's really aggressive. And I think that makes for a great matchup. I think the matchmakers did a great job with this fight because obviously Mike Perry is very aggressive himself. And this fight's going to be wild. I just see this fight going back and forth. Both guys getting hurt. And if you're going to have success against Mike Perry, the smart thing to do is to get the fight to the ground. I'm sure he's been working on his BJJ, but from that Donald Cerrone fight till now, it's not really enough time to make waves in an art in this sport. You know, you can improve in little areas and make small adjustments, but I don't think he's going to go from where he was to a black belt like this, you know, and I'm pretty sure Cowboy Oliveira is like a high-level jiu-jitsu guy, black belt, and he's strong too. He's pretty big for the weight class, you know. And he's lengthy. He's going to have the reach advantage. Mike Perry likes to get inside and use that inside boxing. And he's going to have to against Cowboy Oliveira because Cowboy Oliveira is going to use those straight punches, keep you on the outside. And I think that the fight's going to get so wild that at some point it probably will end up on the ground. Mike Perry's really, really strong for the weight class. Excuse me. But I see Oliveira ultimately getting a win here. I see that he's going to be a little bit more well-rounded when it comes to the ground game. And it's not like Mike Perry has the greatest wrestling. He's good at defense in the clinch. You know, he's good at trying to avoid getting tripped up or taken down on the cage and stuff. But I think the fight just might get out of hand where, you know, he gets caught in some kind of scramble or something like that, and Oliveira might catch a submission there. So I'm going to go with Oliveira by submission. There's those fucking sniffles. Deviated septum. We got Glover Teixeira, Ion Cutelaba. Cutelaba's a short and stocky guy for the weight class, man, but he's got some fucking power punches. And Glover Teixeira's been in there with everybody pretty much in the game. You know, he's fought John Jones before. His last fight, he had a good win over a young prospect, and he looked good in that fight. I think he was hurt early on by Robertson, but he came back to win the fight. So he's still very much, you know, a threat in the division. And he obviously has the experience factor, and having fought the better guys, that does play a role sometimes in these fights. Man, I don't know, because Glover Teixeira, he loves to get in the exchange. He likes to box. He likes to dirty box. But obviously his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu is up there as well. I think if he fights the smart fight, he'll try to get the fight to the ground and be on top, try to get mount, maybe an arm triangle or take the back or something like that. But Cutelaba is short and stocky, strong guy, probably hard to take down, hard to control. And I think he might have a slight power advantage in there as far as the striking goes. Hard to say though, because Glover has that fucking bomb left hook too, and he can knock anybody out. So either one of these guys can go down, to be honest, in the fight. And when I look at it, I honestly feel like experience will play a factor. I do feel like the competition that Glover has faced in the past will play a factor, and I think that he'll fight a smarter fight and he'll come out with a victory. But I think it's going to be hard to finish Cutelaba. I think it's going to be decision victory by Glover Teixeira, just by being able to control him for the most part on the ground. I think he's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit longer on the feet. He might be able to outpoint him with the striking and try to avoid that big power shot, eventually get a clinch, get the takedown. pass guard, and I think Glover has some good ground and pound as well. So I think he'll win the majority of the points by being on top on the ground and come out with the decision. Corey Sandhagen, John Lineker. I'm really excited to see this fight. Obviously, I fought John Lineker. Corey Sandhagen's a prospect coming up who they're moving along fast. Has that, Dominic Cruz style, which is cool. I saw him fight his last fight. I know it was against a guy who took it on short notice, who stepped in and was a debut fighter. So it wasn't really easy to gauge where he's at with that fight. But his fight against Yuri Alcantara, who I also fought, was very impressive. He escaped that armbar, man. It was landing some nasty ground and pound. He's a fast-paced fighter. He's very long and tall for the weight class. And he's good at using his reach. He likes to move a lot, and he likes to use a lot of switching stances, and he throws his punches straight, and he kind of, uses his reach to his advantage. He's a smart fighter. I've seen some of his interviews. He seems very intellectual, and he's well spoken, and he's well thought out with his process and how he approaches these fights. John Lineker, though, having been in there with him, I can say that a couple things. Watching him fight before I fought him, I felt like when I watched him fight, he didn't look as good as he actually is when you're in there with him. He's sneaky, he's smarter than you think. He's not just a brawler. Yeah, he throws power punches in every shot he throws. I definitely felt the power, obviously. I've had 29 pro fights. I fought high-level guys. I fought a lot of good guys. I fought guys at 145. I've never been hit as hard as John Lineker. He's a short, stocky guy, but he carries some God-given power, and it's something you don't want to get touched with. You got to keep your defense sharp in there. You got to keep your hands up, and you got to stay moving. I'm not a fighter that likes to bounce around so much and move around. I was willing to exchange and kind of stay in the pocket range, and I don't think that Corey Sandhagen's that guy. He's more of a Dominic Cruz type of style where he's bouncing on his toes and he's in and out and he's using his cut and his angles, and I think that's the type of style that can beat John Lineker. That's exactly what you need. The way Dillashaw beat him with a lot of feints, a lot of level changes, and landing those takedowns. That if John Lineker has a weakness, it's his wrestling defense, and if you can get him down and you can keep position on top, you can land some good ground and pound on him and try to hurt him there. And he's not great at getting up to his feet necessarily, but he's good at not letting you get to a crazy dominant position or really finish him. He's a really hard guy to finish. Guy's got a hard fucking head. He's got a chin on him, and really you just got to watch out. One thing I noticed too is he leaps in and covers distance very well, because for me, I thought I was outside of his range at points where all of a sudden he would leap in with like a 4-punch combination. Very good at mixing it up from body head. And it's hard to see where it's coming from because they're all kind of hooks. He doesn't throw a lot of straight punches. So you're wing blocking, but you think he's further out than he actually is, and he leaps in a crazy amount and covers some distance that you just don't expect. It's just a weird thing, and his speed is also faster than it looks. So like when I watched his fights, I thought, oh, this guy's going to be a lot slower. But in there, I was like, oh shit, like he's a little bit faster than I had seen when I watched his fight. So something you just got to be aware of. I think Corey Sandhagen's going to have a good game plan. I think he's going to fight smart. I think he's going to move a lot. I think he's going to stick that jab, and I think he's going to look to throw a lot of low leg kicks. His kicking range is going to be outside of Lineker's punching range, and Lineker's got to close the distance. So if he can land a lot of those calf kicks and those low kicks on Lineker, he could slow him down a little bit and start to land his strikes from the outside range more. And but to pick this fight, man, it's fucking tough. I don't know how I see it going. I don't know if I see Lineker eventually touching his chin, because I feel like Lineker is just hunting for your chin the whole fucking time, and it's just exhausting trying to block and get away and avoid that power shot, because they come at 4 or 5 punches at a time, and they come for the whole fight for 3 rounds. So you got to fight him perfect, and you got to fight him smart. part of me feels like Sandhagen's very fast and he's very smart, and I think he's going to get the job done by decision because I just don't see Lineker getting finished. And I think Sandhagen's output might be enough, but it's hard to go against Lineker, man. It's hard to say he's not going to land that one shot that hurts Sandhagen. So I don't know, man. I guess my gut's going with Sandhagen. I do think his style matches up really well with Lineker, and I think if anybody gets it by decision, it'll be Sandhagen. So I guess that's who I'll go with by decision, Corey Sandhagen. Moving down the card. Now I'll make some quick picks. That's it for some breakdowns, but I'll move down and pick a couple fights that I'm interested in. Ben Saunders versus Takashi Sato. Saunders always had that funky rubber guard, man. He's really, really nasty off his back. He's a 10th planet black belt, I believe. Really good guard. Also really great in the clinch with knees. Who we just saw Overeem with those nasty knees in the clinch, man. If you can use your length and your range and your clinch like that and get your knees up. Sorry, taking care of the boomacinos, fucking spilling all over the place. You could really hurt guys, man. That's devastating knees right there. If you can come up, kind of angle them. Guys try to cover up in the middle, and you can kind of bring them up and around. Saunders is very good at that as well. I think he'll get the job done. I think he's gonna get I think he'll get a TKO finish. Jim Miller, baby, old school, back in action against Jason Gonzalez. Gonzalez is a taller guy. He's gonna have the reach advantage, but Jim Miller's got that veteran experience, and Jim Miller's a very well-rounded guy. He's good everywhere. He's a southpaw. Jason Gonzalez is He's fast. He's a quick fighter. He's a fast-paced fighter. But ultimately, I see Jim Miller getting the job done. I think he's going to get dirty in there, land some elbows, cut him up a little bit, maybe take him down and get a submission. I'm going to go with Jim Miller by submission. Diego Lima versus Court McGee. Court McGee has a cool story. Very durable fighter, hard to put away. Diego Lima's coming off an impressive knockout, but Chad Lepre's a little smaller for the weight class, so he's been knocked out before, so we don't know how to gauge that. But I think this fight will most likely go to decision. I think Court McGee will grind it out. He's a grinder. He's a good wrestler. Really good at being smart and dominating positionally in these fights. So I'm going to go with Court McGee by decision. Other than that, couple topics, a couple things to talk about, and then we'll get to a couple of fan questions, and then we'll be out of here. I believe everyone made weight so far for the fights tomorrow, which is good. But yeah, so Tony Ferguson, he had that restraining order, that scenario where he was, his wife was worried about him, and he was having some troubles with his psyche or whatever the hell was going on. Hopefully everything's good. I really want to see Tony Ferguson back in the cage. I miss seeing him fight. Such an exciting fighter. One of the best in the world. We really got to see him fight Khabib, man. I know the fight has fell through so many times, but it seems that the restraining order has been lifted, and he's made some changes with his management. Obviously, he had the same management as Conor McGregor, and I think that can cause some controversy and some weirdness, some awkwardness. You got two fighters at the top under the same management. You just never know what they're looking out for. You know what I mean? Obviously, they want to make money for themselves, so they're going to look out for all of their fighters to do well, and that would make sense. But you just never know what is in the best interest when you're dealing with a situation like that. So he changes management, and my question is, who will he fight next? Because obviously we got Khabib now looking to fight Dustin Poirier to unify the title, and maybe that happens and then Ferguson comes into the picture, or are they going to match up Ferguson while that is happening and see if maybe he could fight Gaethje? What a fucking crazy fight that would be. I mean, who doesn't want to see that fight? But I just don't know if Ferguson will agree to that, because I'm sure he probably feels entitled to fight for a unification fight or nothing. Maybe he will fight Conor. Who knows if Conor's coming back? that could be a fight that they put on the same card as Khabib and um, uh, Dustin Poirier, which I don't know if they would even do that because Conor and Khabib would probably end up fighting backstage somewhere. But that would make for some headlines, and that would be pretty exciting. And then at least they could have a small tournament, and the winners could come out and fight each other. Losers could fight each other and whatnot. So we'll see what happens with that. I wouldn't mind seeing Ferguson fight Gaethje. It seems like Gaethje's looking for someone to fight too. We got Ali Quinta versus Cowboy Cerrone. That's going to be really exciting. I'm curious to see how that plays out. Both guys are looking real hot lately on winning streaks. Well, not streaks, but obviously, Quinta had a great performance against Khabib, but he lost. But then he looked amazing against Kevin Lee. So Cerrone's been on a streak, I think, and he's looked fucking devastating. He's finishing young lions in there. Guys coming up trying to make a name off of him, and he's like, nope, not happening. So that's another fight in the lightweight division. That's big implications, and we'll see what happens. But I'm glad Tony Ferguson is looking good, and he should be coming back, and we'll see what they do with him next. All right, let's get to a couple of fan questions on Twitter. What do we have here? Boom. We got a couple. From Brian McLaughlin, or McClellan. We have, any discussion on matchmaking is always fun. How it affects the public perception of a fighter and the money he can earn. Boom. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, how matchmaking works. I mean, we don't really know. This is all behind the scenes stuff, but obviously the business is ran the way the business is ran. And I think, with the matchmaking, they're very smart about who they matchmake. Obviously, if they're looking to move a guy up, that's a young prospect, they don't want to put him up against another young prospect who has potential to be a superstar, and then you kind of ruin one of the prospects. Instead, you put a prospect against a guy who's a veteran, who has a name, and you take that risk. Okay, this guy's kind of been in and out. He's winning, he's losing, he's winning, he's losing, but he has a big name. People like seeing him fight, but let's give this young prospect who's got a lot of hype behind him a chance against this guy to see if he can make a name off of him. And if he gets a win, then that just elevates that prospect, and that gives them stars in the making. They're looking to build stars. So they're picking and choosing who they feel is capable to be that, and they're giving those guys the matchups that can get them to that place. Now, at some point, as a star in the making, you got to fight the best guys in the world. So it really doesn't matter. At some point, the truth comes out. You can't lie. So you can get matched up against some good guys. For example, Sean O'Malley, I think he's been matched up well stylistically, and now he's fighting Chito Vera. In my opinion, this is the matchup that we see where O'Malley really is, because Vera's no joke. He's fought in top guys in this division. He's been in the game for a while. He finishes fights, very well rounded, very great submission skills, and it looks like he's improved in his striking, and he's starting to finish guys on the feet too. So this is that first fight for O'Malley that I feel like we actually see, okay, this isn't just some hype shit. This is a guy who's legitimately going to be a contender. And, sooner or later you find that out. So whether or not the matchmaking is on your side or whatnot, it really doesn't matter. Because if you're a true fighter, you should be willing to fight anybody and everybody and believe that you can beat that person. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing, So, yeah, sometimes it plays a role. But obviously, as the fighter, in my opinion, at least, if you're a fighter, you really shouldn't even be thinking about who you fight. It's just about yourself and beating everybody who's in your way, because eventually you got to fight everybody that's at the top anyways, if that's your goal, right? You get the title, what happens then? Everyone fucking below you is coming after you. The target's on your back. So at some point, this shit's going to just, unfold the way it's going to unfold. But yeah, it's an interesting game. It's an interesting business, how they line guys up to kind of slowly move them along the way, and then some guys they fast track, and it's just I always wonder like how those conversations go or why they do certain things like that. But yeah, I guess they do move the divisions along a little bit differently. I'm sure they single out guys that they really like, and then they have guys that are journeymen that they're trying to kind of use as a stepping stone type of fighter. I'm sure they have people like that where they're like, listen, this guy's not really, we don't, it's not a big deal if he loses, but we want this guy to win. This is a good style matchup. Let's have him fight him, see what happens. We could bring his star power up, and this guy really will remain the same. I guess they call those gatekeepers, but yeah, crazy game, man. I wouldn't mind being a matchmaker. It'd be a fun fucking job, but maybe not. Maybe a lot of stress. I don't know. Joe Silva's out of the game. He's like, fuck this, I'm done. From GC, Sam Illich. Do you think UFC with ESPN Plus and Bellator with DAZN, there is a risk the sport won't attract many new fans as majority events behind paywall now? I don't know if they worded this correctly, but I kind of understand what they're saying. As far as ESPN Plus goes and DAZN and stuff like that, I don't think it's going to hurt the fan base necessarily, but I think that the pay scale is different now, obviously, with the pay-per-views. UFC got that upfront money from ESPN. They got their deal sealed and done, and they're happy, I'm sure. And now it's up to ESPN to, put the fights out and cover the fights. They are doing some good things with the UFC, the behind the scenes stuff, and Brett Okamoto's putting some really great coverage, great interviews out there. I think it's going to be a constant evolution. Obviously things are always going to have to be improved on, but I think the fan base will remain the same for the most part, and ESPN's the biggest you can get. It's the best platform you can be on as far as professional sports goes. So I think it's great for the sport. I don't know how great it is for the individual fighter himself, but as far as negotiation goes and pay goes, but for the sport as a whole, I think it's great because being covered on ESPN is just going to get out more to the casual fans who are just watching TV, watching sports to watch sports. And, obviously you got your hardcore fans who are always going to be on par with that. But yeah, technology is where it's at. Streaming is where it's at. And I know ESPN Plus could be like a little bit of a pain in the ass right now. It's still a work in progress. But once things get, sealed and dealed and figured out and smoothened out and stuff like that, I think it'll be fine for the fans. I think everyone will understand what's going on and how to work this, and but we'll see how things play out. ESPN Plus is a little weird. It's different, like doing the pay-per-views like through the app on the phone and not like on the TV and stuff like that. But I guess you have a smart TV, you just kind of link it up and Bluetooth, and you put the fights on there through the app, and it's not really that complicated. But a lot of people who are not so technological are like, what the hell's going on? So I guess it could hurt that part of things, but it'll pick up as things go, and I think everything will start running smooth. The UFC knows what they're doing, obviously, and ESPN, it gets no bigger than that. So, things are going to keep moving forward no matter what, and they'll get better and better as things goes on. And that's it, baby. So, can't wait to see some of these fights. 2 big cards. We got UFC and Bellator, I think, back-to-back coming up tomorrow, and excited for the fights. If you can give me a thumbs up, if you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate it. We'll keep doing these boom breakdowns, and hopefully Sean Al-Shadi steps up and gets a little boom time segment going on, a weekly boom time segment, so we can break down some fights and some hot topics, and that'll be awesome. I'd love to take on some new adventures alongside fighting. I'd love to interview fighters and stuff like that in the future, and be part of the media. That'd be fun because this sport is all I know and this is what I love. So look forward to that. Hopefully some things come into play. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter at BrianBoom135, and get your fucking boomacinos in, all right? Boom!